But let's shift a little from searching individuals to searching a crime scene. So say, for example, you're at a crime scene in a house. We know that, especially with needles and with pipes, oftentimes, like I know a lot of folks have left them in couches. And then when an officer's had to search a house for drugs, that they're putting their hands in the couch and then they get stuck that way. I've heard that story a lot from law enforcement across North Carolina and outside the state. And I was just wondering, what are, some common situations around crime scenes where you've heard of people getting stuck or cut by something? And what are some ways that we can kind of get around those issues?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a bona fide legitimate concern. I actually believe that may present a little bit more of a dangerous situation, because anything that's secreted in a cabinet somewhere, or stuck in a cushion, under a cushion, inside the cushion, inside the fluffy parts of a pillow, and so on and so forth. I was actively involved in a lot of drug warrant executions. So the objective is obviously to perform some type of a buy and bust that's going to lead ultimately to where you can actually get a warrant for a particular location. I know that once we entered and secured the particular apartment or house or whatever it may be, we tried to immediately make it our point to communicate, once again, the articulation, to get people to let us know where exactly, what we're looking for, where is it at, okay? And that could be a situation where that can work out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There are some consequences if people don't necessarily move forward and tell you this information. And that could be something as simple as, legally, all parties in that particular house are responsible for those particular drugs in the house. So there are different things that can be articulated, and that's really along a law enforcement level. But the bottom line is, ultimately, it's going to come down to some form of a search. And I've seen narcotic products, I've seen syringes, I've seen glass pipes hidden, underneath 2 pork chops on a plate in the refrigerator. I've seen everything from underneath mattresses to, all of the little goody soap bags that you may have in like a medicine cabinet will be containing items, so on and so forth. At this particular instance here, and I can't say this or reiterate this enough, for me, if there's a little boy or a little girl, if there's a loved one, a significant other, if there's a mother or father, if there's just a vacation dream in Bora Bora that you've been waiting on for like the last 5 years, you can't slow this process down enough. If there's no one in that apartment or no one in that confined area that can hurt you, you can't slow it down enough. Now, it doesn't mean, and I want to be realistic, doesn't mean we're going to take all day about getting this thing done, But it just means that you have to move through it just being smart. You have to really, really, really be smart. Don't go into any spot unless you can see it first. Light every single area, put a torch in put a flashlight in every single area that you can't see clearly into. Where possible, make sure that you use the assistance of canine units that may exist in your particular unit to sniff out what may be necessary. Make sure on all settings, I took a situation, wasn't needle related, but it could have been a needle related situation of just actually walking through an abandoned building, and I took a nail that ended up going from the bottom of a sneaker or a tennis shoe all the way to the top of my foot, so it was all the way through. So it was literally having someone have me yank my leg up and through, Funny part about that story is that didn't hurt that much, but the tetanus shot was brutal. But so wear proper footwear. Wear footwear that's going to be it's going to give you a little bit more supportive protection, because you don't know where you're going to be stepping on, what you're going to be stepping on, But once again, I can't say enough. It's speed, it's slow down, it's moving with the degree of intelligence. Once you know that the imminent threat is not there.
I agree with everything that you said. One thing that we used to do a lot prior to executing the search warrant is we'd have a quick huddle and make sure that everybody on the team knew what we were looking for and knew what the risks were. And if anybody, sometimes we'd have to pull other people onto the team, people that knew the neighborhood if we were going into some place that we'd never been before, that might have known the suspects or people in the house or active players around the corner, so that we gathered as much information as we possibly could. And then, a lot of times these young guys are going in, they're doing the operation out of grandma's basement. Well, grandma's diabetic, grandma's got rheumatoid arthritis, grandma's got a lot of needles around, and not only are they pilching, the younger brother's pilching the needles and selling those out the back door. Like, it's a whole operation. Like, the more information you can gather, the better you're going to do. And so, absolutely, once you get in the door and everything's secure, you have all the time in the world. I'm not going to order Papa John's and have pizza delivered while we're doing it, but a lot of times we would communicate while we were looking. People calling stuff out from room to room. Hey, I found this in here. You guys be careful. I think we got needles. Or, you know, any kind of little evidence that something was going on. The kitchen was always a really big place. We found all kinds of stuff hidden in cereal boxes and the refrigerator and the freezer and all that kind of stuff. But one quick thing that I used to do is take a quick, if I was responsible for a room, a bathroom or something, take a quick look at the whole scene, try and see if anything was out of place. Are those tiles, do they look funny to me? Is there something over there? Just like almost like a holistic view, very quickly, so I could kind of figure out my own game plan. Something looks out of place. And then sometimes I would take a flashlight and I would shine it, do this on crime scenes outdoors a lot, shine it kind of laterally over the ground like that to see if anything's picking up or splinting. Sometimes for shell casings and stuff, you can find them in grass. Just very quick, it's something really safe that you can do. Maybe you'll find something, maybe you won't, but you know, just a couple of quick things like that. Put your gloves on. You're going to get sweaty. It's going to be hot in there, but take your time looking, and then let everybody else know what you found while you're doing it. Just so, you know, where there's one, there's 25 needles.
Also, a resource that a lot of agencies have that goes underused is the crime scene investigative unit. I mean, Durham has a unit that is non-sworn police or non-sworn people that, you know, they are trained in bloodborne pathogens. They're trained in, and they have the equipment to be able to safely extract these things. I know that a lot of people have tunnel vision. If they see a syringe, they're like, oh, that's a syringe, it's dangerous, let me secure it because it's safer in my hand than anyone else's. And that might not be true. You know, I'd rather have a professional who's a little bit more trained than I am handle it, if at all possible. And there are resources that you can use for that.
Sure. You can also take all the cushions off the couch. Then look at the couch. You don't stick your hands in between the cushions. Take the bedding off. You put it back. It might not be as clean as when you put it on, but you know, you can slow it down. There's lots of ways you can take a moment, get a friend to help you move the bed over. You know, anything like that. You just have to be careful because it's an unknown. It's all unknown, and you have to keep yourself safe. It could, you know, there could be a needle hiding under anything, or just anything that's dangerous. I've cut my fingers on razor blades before, you know, and who knows? Put my hand in stupidly in an ashtray that was in a car, cut my finger on one. He had two in there. One he'd been cutting his heroin with, and the other one he hadn't. Luckily, I cut my finger on the clean one. But how clean was that? I mean, you know, you just really never know. Workmen have utility knives in their pockets. They've got tools they use to scrape paint with, all kinds of stuff. And they don't think about that when you say, you know, anything sharp on you. It's like, no, I just came from work.
Tools of the trade.
Yeah, absolutely. They would never think about it because it's just always in their pocket. So be aware. If the guy's wearing painter's pants, he might have painter's tools on him. You know, you got to kind of assess the situation before you go in. Just takes a minute.
It's very true that they don't, a lot of times, a person doesn't understand what you consider to be dangerous.
Right, exactly.
In a car, I had a similar situation. I reached into a bag, and my hand came out completely covered in vomit. And the person never even thought to tell me that they had puked in a bag earlier because they got sick. And when I asked him, it was a kid, I said, you know, why didn't you tell me? He said, well, I didn't think that would hurt you. And that was his answer to the question. I asked him, is there anything that's going to hurt me? And he didn't think puke would hurt me.
And Jenna, I'm really glad you brought up the flashlight situation. One of the top tips I've heard is don't stick your hands anywhere you can't see.
Right.
And when you use the flashlight, you know, it really helps with being able to determine if there is anything dangerous within a certain zone. So that's a really great tip. And so, you know, we have all these risks out there right now. What are some policies that we can put into play that will eliminate or severely reduce a lot of these dangers that you can recommend?
From the law enforcement perspective, I think that within the agency, there can be standard operational procedures that are changed, or maybe they don't need to be changed, but I mean, the standard operational procedures need to include refresher courses on training, up-to-date training on newly developed ways to get hurt that other police officers have come across. There's a listserv that's available for declassified law enforcement sensitive information from all across the country that you get every day emails of just pages and pages of pictures and things like that law enforcement officers have come across, such as a belt buckle that had a pistol in it. And it was not a concealed weapon because it was openly there, but you thought it was part of the belt buckle. Or, you know, compartments in shoes that they came across in some state. And it's just a way of sharing information that would be great to change the policy in the police department to make that available to all of the officers. At my police department, it wasn't until I found out about it and changed it that only the chief and the captains got those emails, and they weren't on patrol. They didn't deal with it. There was no reason why they even needed to know about it, but we did need to know about it on patrol. So sharing information like that.
I'm gonna, I'll go in two directions, and I'm definitely gonna, Sam, I'm definitely gonna I'm gonna stay in your theme. Education is absolutely paramount. Education and training is absolutely paramount. I think that anyone that ultimately has access to what we're talking about today, especially if you're a law enforcement agent, you could probably hold some of these things. You're probably going to be in a little bit of a state of denial about what I'm going to say, but you could probably, if you really think about it, you'll hold it true. Law enforcement agents and personnel have a very different way of viewing things. Very different way of kind of like just proceeding through life. And I don't want to say it proceeds along very fearless, invincible, machismo lines, but there is a type of inner courage that occasionally makes us foolish. It makes us foolish and reckless. And let me just try to put this in a little bit of perspective. And I oftentimes, I've spoken with people and I talk about how with all the multiple contacts that you may have, and you may have an active officer that has no less than 50 contacts, 60 contacts a week on a given basis or whatever it may be, or whatever the number may be, where your agency's at. When you start to accumulate over the course of a year and then over the course of a couple of years, we're talking about thousands of incidents where you've put your hand on someone, you've touched someone, you've spoken to someone, or whatever it is. And the reality of it is that you only have to make a mistake one time to jeopardize your well-being. So I kind of want to connect the education component to like something that I went through, and this had nothing to do with syringes or any information, anything pertaining to what we're talking about today, but it pertains to September 11th. I can personally think back to being a first responder at September 11th, and there were situations where people were wearing, we had certain equipment that we obviously had to wear. We were wearing hard hats, we were wearing masks, we were wearing Tyvek suits, we were wearing boots. But the problem is that, and let's be honest, it's no different than a bulletproof or a protective armor. It's uncomfortable. So oftentimes, be it if we were at Ground Zero or if we were at the landfill in Staten Island, there would be times when you would take the mask off. Oftentimes, I would observe people that were working for an entire tour without their mask on. They would have the hard hat on, but they just, at that time, there was no information to say that all of these airborne agents that were just there, and the dust that we were breathing and the air that we were breathing was going to create long-term problems, long-term health issues later on. So ultimately what happened is some of these people, and I'm not saying these people, specifically, were people that are sick now, or people, God forbid, that have passed away, because I do receive an article, a magazine every single month that's documenting people that have passed away that are law enforcement, officials from my particular agency. Some of them are September 11 related, some of them aren't, but the fact is, if they knew the health risks that they were exposing themselves to, would they in fact take the mask off? Education is so important. I think part of education has to extend to a point where people realize that the information that they're being given actually means something. As it pertains to syringe exchange and syringe decriminalization, I think law enforcement personnel needs to understand that this is probably something that will prove to be a long-term benefit towards their overall safety. People need to know what they're up against. It's one needle prick. That could be the one wrong needle prick. It's just one time you're exposed to hepatitis C. That could be the one wrong time. And I think we just need to training courses and just continual opportunities to just have in-service training and just remind people this is a serious thing that we need to look at and address.